look at simple interest. And there's usually tons of just some formulas given. Sometimes they give you 2 or 3 to look at, but they all essentially play with this formula here. So if you can memorize this one and understand what each of these things stand for and what they do, you can figure out any question with just this one formula. So we have our little legend here on the right. FV is the future value, or the amount in the future. P is, they usually call it the principal, but it's also can be considered the present amount, like the amount of money you have right now. R is your interest rate, so it's R multiplied by time, how much time this is. So they've given us this little question here. $300 is invested for 2.5 years at 6% in simple interest account. How much interest is earned is question 1, and what is the total amount is question 2. So we have 2 things we have to answer here. So what we'll do is kind of highlight what's important information. We know that $300 is invested. It's invested for 2.5 years, and the interest rate is 6%. Okay, so we kind of have to decide what each of those is. What is the $300 in this question? Do you know what it's referring to? Which of these things on the right here it's talking about?
The P?
Yeah, that's right. That's the present value. Good. So here's our P value. What about the 2.5 years?
The time.
Perfect. So there's our time. And the 6% is our interest rate. Great. So by deduction, they've given us this, this, and this. So clearly, this is something we don't know. So we can kind of set it up like that. So let's go to write it out. We have our future value is equal to the present value, which is the 300 we said. Multiplied by 1 plus the interest rate. Now, 6% we need to turn into a decimal. Do you know how to turn that?
By 100.
We divide it by 100. Yeah, so we'll end up with 0.06 when you do that. And then time, now they didn't say this, but it says it's 6%. It should say per year, okay? Because the timing, if it said like per month and they said it was years, we'd have to convert years to months. But I'm going to go on the assumption that everything's going to be very, very straightforward. So whatever the years or time frame is, that's what your time is going to be. So 2.5 will be your time in this question. Oh, I want to do that in orange there. Okay, so what we want to do now is essentially work out all of this bed mass. When we're looking at this, we're thinking of bed mass. So we'll take out our calculator here, and we'll go through bed mass. So the very first thing here is we have these 2 things. We need to multiply them. 0.06 times 2.5, so 0.06 times 2.5 equals 0.15. Great, so we'll do this one step at a time. Future value is equal to 300. 1 plus 0.15. I think that's what it said. Yes, 0.15. Okay, great. So right now we're clearly solving for what? What is it we're looking for? Future value. And which of the 2 questions are we actually addressing right now?
The first one. Or the second one.
Yeah, the second one.
Yep.
So we're kind of out of order, but that's because of the way this is kind of set up, this formula. Once we have the future value, we can use that information to go back and solve part 1. So we're going to continue with what we're doing here. So again, in BEDMAS, we add those values within the brackets. So if future value is equal to 300 times, this will be 1.15. So now we're just doing 1.15 times 300. So the future value is going to be equal to, calculator out, 300 times 1.15, 345. Great. So the future value is $345. So we found part 2. That's excellent. Part 1 asks how much interest is earned. Well, since we have this, we can now figure out how much we have now compared to how much we originally put in. So because we originally put in 300, we take our 345 and we subtract our 300, and they earned $45 in interest. So let's talk about this. Simple interest accounts earn the exact same amount of interest every single time period. So if it's every year, every month, whatever it is, earns the same amount, which is very different from compound interest. In fact, I don't know of anybody who uses simple interest. Banks use compound interest. Maybe a friend or something like that would use this type. But this is a very, very basic form of how to accrue interest, okay? And then you could potentially, I'm not going to go into it, but you could, if they gave you a future amount and the other information, you could isolate for P and find out P. If they gave you these and you needed to find R, you could do it. If you needed to find the amount of time, you could do it. This formula can solve for 1, 2, 3, 4 different pieces of information as long as you have the other 3.
Yep.
Okay?